3D Cookie Monster, and I wanted to show you, I wanted to show you how I do that. I don't know why I can't ever talk when I do these things, but whatever. I'm making a 3D Cookie Monster, and I want to show you what I do. So if you want to see how I make the 3D Cookie Monster, then just keep on watching. Okay, so to start, I have a styrofoam block because I'm going to have his legs hanging over the side. So I have a styrofoam block wrapped in plastic wrap. I have a 5-inch cake pan because this Cookie Monster is going on top of a 5-inch cake, and I want to make sure that I don't make him too big or too small. So I'm using this for size. I have some blue royal icing. I can leave the recipe for royal icing below. And I just dyed it with this royal blue icing coloring. I have some blue fondant, white fondant, black fondant that I rolled out because that's going to be the pupil of the eyes. Some Crisco for my hands, some cornstarch, and some Tylose powder. As I always say, I always mix fondant with a little bit of Tylose powder. It helps the fondant to set hard, so it keeps its shape. I will link that below. So to start, I take a piece of fondant and I'm going to just knead it. My hands are clean, I just washed them. Little cornstarch here to keep my hands from getting too sticky with the fondant. So I'm going to knead this together and just roll it into a ball. And then I'm going to shape the ball into his body. When I shape his body, I just place it on here on the table and take my hands and just roll it, making it thinner at the top and thicker at the bottom. So I kind of have my hands on a slant this way to kind of make like a cone shape. And there's that. So I'm going to take my 5-inch cake pan and put it on top to make sure that's good. He's not too big, not too small. The head will be up here. The legs will be hanging down. So if you make it too small or too big, it may not look right for the cake. This is an extra step that you don't have to take, but I take it. So we have the body here. Since I added a lot of Tylose to this is holding its shape pretty well. If you don't have Tylose, or if you did not add enough and it doesn't hold its shape, you're going to have to let this dry for, I would say 20 to 30 minutes until it starts to hold its shape and the fondant doesn't move. Now moving on to the legs. So I'll take another piece of fondant here and start to knead it in my hands. I'm using marshmallow fondant, by the way. I can link the video that I make marshmallow fondant. You can see my recipe. So now I have it in a ball. I'm going to roll it out into a log. And now here's a leg. Now what I want to do is make the foot. So I'm going to pinch this up to make the toes and kind of pinch it back a little bit to make the heel. This doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to cover it in the royal icing to make the fur. So you really just need the basic shape for it. So here's his leg. Now, when he sits over the edge, you can actually make him just sit down and have his legs out to the side, but I'm not doing that this time. I'm going to have him sit over the edge. So we're going to need the leg to kind of bend over the side of the cake. So I do that here. I bend this so it holds its shape here. Now this part is too thick, so I have to flatten this out so the body will be able to sit on top of it. It's gonna look weird until it's all put together, but it will all make sense eventually, I promise. Okay, so there's a leg, and the body sits on top of it. Okay, then we do that again. I'm just gonna put that aside. And then repeat the process for the other leg. There we go. I'll probably cross them over one another and the body will sit on top. Okay, so we have the body and the legs. Now let's set these aside. I'm going to separate these here and put them down on the countertop like this, just so they hold their shape while I work with the rest of the body. If this starts to lose its shape a little bit, I just take my hands and try to squeeze it so it is back into shape, if that makes any sense. Okay. Now on to the head. So, when you're doing this, you have to make sure that the head is proportionate to the body. So obviously, if I put this big piece of fondant on top, the head is going to be way too big for the body. So you have to make sure that everything is proportionate. I'm going to use a little Crisco on my hands because they're getting a little sticky. And then break off a piece of fondant. And that still looks a little big. That looks like it's a good size. And actually, take a little more off. And that looks like it's a pretty good size. So now I'm going to knead it a little bit and then roll it into a ball. Let's roll it into a ball and set it on top. That looks good. So now this is the head. I'm going to set that aside and make the arms. Now the same thing for the arms. I'm going to take a piece. Now I'm going to make him holding a cookie. So the arms are going to come around the front. He's going to hold the cookie here. They also say you're going to need an X-Acto knife. So I'm going to roll this into a ball. Roll it into a log. Now this is way too big. So I'm going to have to cut some of it off. Obviously, if I put the arm there, that's like ridiculous. So what I do is I take my X-Acto knife and I'm going to cut it on an angle. So the arm has to start around here. I'm going to make it a little thinner. So I can even just cut this piece off, rip this piece off with my fingers. So the arm is going to be like this. So I'm going to flatten the part for the hand. Now this is going to have fur on it, so I don't have to I'm not going to make the individual fingers or anything like that. So I'm just going to flatten the part for the hand, and I'm going to take my X-Acto knife. I'm going to cut it on an angle like this. That way this part lays flat against the side of the back of the body. It's going to look weird now, I promise you. It'll look good as we put it together. So here's an arm. I'm going to lay that aside and do the same thing for the other arm. Here's that piece that I just ripped off. So roll it into a log. Kind of make sure it's the same size. Flatten the hand part. And then I'm going to just cut on an angle so the part that lays against the back is going to be flat. Okay. So when the arms come around, they'll be like this, holding the cookie. Okay, setting the arms aside with the head and the legs and the body. Now I have some white fondant here for the eyeballs. You have to have all this ready before we start to put the fur on, and I will show you why. This is starting to fall a little bit, so again, I'm going to take my hands and roll them to try to keep this from losing its shape. I'm going to set this aside and bring the head on top. So now, the eyeballs. 2 eyeballs go on top. Again, you have to make sure that the size looks good with the size of the head. So if I put an eyeball that's on here that's this big, obviously that looks stupid. That's way too big. So you have to eyeball it, pun intended, and make sure that they are the right size. Even that is still a little too big. So keep breaking off some fondant until you get it to the size that you want it to be. This one's a little bigger. And that looks like it's pretty good. So now I'm going to just roll each ball so it's smooth. And here's the eyeballs. Now next, to make the pupils, I have this little handy dandy compartment thing that I keep all of my tips in. And you have to see which tip is going to go with the pupil. Like, I don't want the pupils to be too small or too big. This is a number 12, and that actually looks pretty good. So I'm going to take my black fondant and cut 2 circles out. And then take a paintbrush with a little bit of water on the back of each pupil. Now, Cookie Monster's eyeballs, this is going to sit this way on top of the head. Cookie Monster's eyeballs is like, one of them is low, one of them is high. Like, they're kind of crazy eyes. They don't look right at the person, if that makes any sense. Because he's kind of like that, right? So when you put it up here, it'll be more like that, okay? Okay, now we have the eyeballs ready. Next step is to make the mouth. I also meant to say you're going to need a Dresden tool, my favorite tool. So, now to make the mouth, I'm going to take the ball, take a wet paper towel just to make sure there's nothing on this X-Acto knife. I'm going to take the head and I want to cut his mouth out. So I'm just going to cut a straight line across and then a half a circle down. I'm just pushing the tip of the X-Acto knife in right now just to get the outline. So now I have the outline. I'm going to cut a little deeper, trying not to press too hard so I'm not losing the shape of the head. Okay. Now I'm going to try to pull this out. It's going to be a little messy. I'll show you how to clean it up. So I'm just taking the tip and pulling out the extra fondant. Okay. Now, I'm going to take my Dresden tool, the flat end, and just try to push the extra fondant down to clean it up a little bit. Okay. Now, what I want to do is I want a black piece of fondant on the inside of the mouth. So I just need to cut a half circle out of this fondant. This is going to be weird the way that I do it, but to measure how far across it has to be, I just hold it up here. I made one notch here. This is the end. And I'm going to make another notch here. This is the other end. And now I'm just going to cut a curve down this way, like I did for the mouth. Now I'm going to put this down so I can cut it out. Okay, now this is where I do trial and error. So I have this shape right here, and I try to put it in the mouth, and right now it's too big. So I need to take a little bit off of this side. So what I do, take this Dresden tool and just kind of put a line where it needs to be cut. Take it out. And then I'm just going to cut that little line that I made off. Smooth the edges. And now that should fit in there. Good. So I'm going to wet this paintbrush and put some water on the back. And now put the black piece on the inside and use my Dresden tool to maneuver it into place. Okay, so there is his mouth. So I have the body, the legs, the eyeballs with the pupils, the arms. Now I need the cookie. We have to make everything that's going on Cookie Monster first because the royal icing is going to hold this all together. So I want to have everything pre-made so when I start to put the royal icing on, we can just assemble the whole thing. It will make sense in a minute. So here I have some fondant that I'm going to use to make the cookie. It's like a light tan. The colors I mixed to get this was a little bit of gold, a little bit of brown, and believe it or not, a little bit of green, because the green cancels out the pink hue that comes from the brown. So I have this cookie dough looking piece of fondant. I'm just going to roll it out, kind of thick. I have this Atico circle cutter set, and I'm going to hold a circle up to Cookie Monster's body and see which one, like this one would be way too big. That's too big of a cookie. So it would be either this one or this one's a little smaller. I think I'm going to go with the bigger one. Just might look cuter just holding a big cookie. I don't know. We'll see. Someone had this tip online. I can't remember who it was. But if you're cutting something with a circle cutter and you put a piece of plastic, this is just plastic wrap on top of it, as you push down, it's going to round the sides of it so it's not just a straight edge on the cookies. And I thought that's such a genius tip. I wish I knew who to credit that to. As you can see, it comes in the comes out in the shape of like a Nilla wafer, right? It has rounded edges. So looks more like a cookie when you do it like that. And like always, I just round or I smooth the edges out. I do want to add a little dimension to this. So I have some chocolate petal dust. Going to dip the brush in, tap it off, and just dust it a little bit just to bring it to life. So I'm going to use, for the chocolate chips, I'm going to use real chocolate chips. So I have these here, and I'm going to, let's use a little piping gel. So I have this piping gel here. Just going to dip my paintbrush in there, and I'm going to take the chip. I don't want big chunks, so I'm going to just a little bit of piping gel on the back, and then push it into the cookie. So now I'm going to have handy some skewers and toothpicks. I was always looking for long toothpicks, and I found these little mini bamboo skewers, and these work perfectly because sometimes a toothpick just isn't long enough for what I'm doing. Now this is where it's going to get a little messy, so I'm going to put these gloves on. I'm going to have all these pieces. I might come out of frame here where the pieces are, but I want to have all of them near me so I can start to put this together. Okay, so I have all the body parts and the cookie, and I'm going to start to assemble this. So, put your gloves on and get your blue royal icing. I always keep the lid on here because the royal icing dries out pretty fast. Now, in this block, I've used this a lot, so I have a bunch of holes in here. He's gonna be sitting close to the side. I have holes all over the place here. I'm gonna put him near the side of the cake and just take the skewer. I'm twisting it. If I push it down, it's gonna lose its shape here. So I'm twisting it, rubbing my fingers together to twist so this goes down into the board or into the styrofoam block. So there we go. So I have the royal icing here. It's gonna get a little messy. Take a little bit of the royal icing in my fingers and I just start, I'm just going like this on the body with the royal icing. As I need more, I add more to the gloves. And I'll go back and refine this and make the fur look better, but we just wanted to get sticky for now. So I'm going to take the body and put it down, and I'll take a leg and do the same thing. Lift up the body, put the leg down, and let it start to hang over the edge. And then I'm grabbing the other leg, doing this, repeating the process. Kind of pressing it onto the back here and pulling it around to the front. Now, this royal icing does dry quickly, but not super quick. So what we want to do, I want to make some more fur on the head. So I'm taking more royal icing. This time I'm pushing it down and lifting up, and this gives you a more of a fur-like texture. Makes him look more Cookie Monster-ish. And I'm just gonna really do this around the whole body. But I'm gonna start with the head and wash my hands again because I have to put the eyeballs on the top and I can't have any blue on my hands as I do that. When I put the eyeballs on, I always take toothpick, I break it in half and then stick both pieces in here so the eyeballs have something to stick into. So I have one here, making sure the pupils are going in the right direction, and one going up like that. So now this is going to topple forward. I'm just going to use that as a weight to hold it. So now I just want to make sure that I give this enough fur texture. So taking the royal icing And I'm going to just press it against Cookie Monster and lift up all the way around the whole body to give him more of a furry texture. Alright, I'm moving his eyes down a little bit because I feel like they were too high. You gotta make sure the eyeballs are in the right spot so he looks right. Okay. And then just continuing making some more texture on the body. So I'm going to put this back on here as a weight so this doesn't fall over. And just let him stiffen up for a couple minutes before I transfer him onto the cake. Okay, so now I have the cake here. I actually do have I have a video on how I do the Sesame Street sign and also how I do these little curly things. I can also add those or link those two videos below. I'm going to take a spatula. Going to help me lift this, stick it underneath him and help me lift him up so I can transfer him. I'm going to stick a skewer underneath him and I want him to be able to sit over the edge. So I'm going to stick the skewer in right here. Push it down. And here he is. Now, he's looking the wrong direction. So I'm just going to twist his head. Exorcist style. Ah, sorry, Cookie. Oh, jeez. Here's the front of the cake. So I want him looking at me a little bit more. So lift up the head. That's why I didn't want him to dry too much before I put him on here, because I still need to maneuver things into place. So, now I lost a little bit of texture as I moved him, so I can take my my royal icing and just start to fill in anywhere that looks a little too flat. And for the final touch, I just take the cookie. I'm running out of royal icing, so I'm going to take a little bit of buttercream. I have some vanilla buttercream on a paintbrush. I'm going to just stick that on the back of the cookie. And stick the cookie here. So it looks like he's holding it. Cookie Monster with his cookie sitting on top of cookies. And there's your 3D Cookie Monster. Happy Cookie Monster on his cake. So here you go. Here's your adorable little 3D Cookie Monster topper for your cake. I'm gonna put this down because it's a little heavy and I don't want to drop it. So what do I want to say about this? You want to make sure there is a skewer in the Cookie Monster so he doesn't topple over. You also want to make sure that you make all the pieces first. So when you're putting the fur on, you have everything ready to assemble. I really can't, and you want to make sure that you have enough royal icing so you can make enough fur on Cookie Monster. Elmo is basically the same way, except he's red, obviously. Did I even have to say that? One of my peeves with Cookie Monster and Elmo and characters like this is if you don't get the eyes to look right, then they look like they're a little off. So step back from it and look at it and make sure the eyes are positioned in the right spot. Because I see a lot of times people do Elmo and they put the eyes really close together, or they put it too close to the mouth or too far away, and it just doesn't look right. So There's a little tip there. I really can't think of anything else to say. So if you have any questions, leave them below and I will get back to you as soon as I can. And like always, if you like this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button if you haven't already and you want to see more videos like this. Also, you can follow me on social media why can't I talk? And I am on social media. You can follow me on Facebook and Instagram, and I have my website. I will link all of that below. And I can't think of anything else. So thank you for watching the video, and I will see you on the next one. Bye!